and welcome to the Sanctuary, a safe space to speak from the heart. I'm your host, Israel, and today from the Far East, right?
It's pretty far east.
My friend, the guy that has made me win a couple of awards, Scott Stephenson. How is it going?
It's,
Welcome to the Sanctuary.
it's going great, man. I'm glad to see you and do the show.
Right, man. So, first off, thanks for everything. The man who whispered to flowers, um, just killed.
When you
you
when you
know,
think of the context of that movie, you're like, maybe that's the wrong choice of words.
right. He did great. He did
Yeah,
great.
yeah, yeah.
Yo, so Steven, I want to start growing up. Did you always want to be an actor, or how did that start?
That didn't really start until high school. Well, just before high school, actually. I always had a flair for the dramatic, I think. But when I was in grade 9, I was a skateboarder. I listened to punk rock and heavy metal, and I was kind of like, long hair and, didn't care about culture. And my grade 9 English class went to the high school to see the high school production of Charles Dickens' A Tale of Two Cities. And me and my friends all
Mm,
sat in the back because we wanted to be like, screwing around.
super
And
cool.
yeah, super cool. And then as soon as the lights went down, the spotlights went on, I was just like, what is this? And I was like telling my friends, shut up, man, shut up. And I'm like getting right into Dickens. And as soon as I saw that, when it came time to choose my high school courses, I made sure I picked drama. And my
Mm,
teacher was very, very supportive of me, and we're still friends today. Sheila McLean, we still correspond, and she was very fundamental in pushing me to maybe pursue it professionally.
mm. So you see this play basically turned your life around. How was it doing drama in high school?
It was it's such a great outlet for teenagers. You already have so much pent up angst, and and it's just a great um, way to focus all kinds of positive and negative energy in a safe place, and it's an artsy crowd, right? So everyone was kind of on the same team. It's something, even if you're not going to become an actor or an artist or a musician, I think everyone should at least take one arts course before they leave high school. Like, it should be mandatory, I think.
Why?
Appreciation for one thing, and the other thing is you learn a lot about yourself when you think creatively. And I don't think I think high schools are putting out cookie cutter humans, good at math, science, and that's about it. And we need those people. But some of those people are being put out like they when you ask them to think outside the box creatively, it's harder for them. And I think that any arts class, no matter what it is, it challenges a young mind to think originally. And there are no
Mm,
wrong answers. There are no wrong
mm,
answers, there are just better answers.
mm-hmm. And did you get into acting right away in high school?
Well, yeah, after I took the 1 year of drama that was offered, I did the school plays, and the high school Nova Scotia High School Drama Fest happened every year. I was always very involved in that. But I school and me towards the end, I actually dropped out of high school. I never finished. I had all my arts and humanities courses, and then I had to take all these science and math courses that I didn't have the patience for when I was younger. And so, unfortunately, I dropped out, and I traveled around Canada. I lived in the West Coast, mostly skateboarding. Like, I was a competitive skateboarder for a while,
Mm-hmm.
not professional. And just working in kitchens and stuff. And then I was in Whistler, BC, when I was like, what am I missing in my life? And I remembered loving and doing that. And I decided to go back to Halifax and see what I could do about going to university. And At 24, I was accepted at Dalhousie as a mature student. Mature at 24. But yeah, and they let me in, and I got an honors degree in theater, and went on to get a Master's of Fine Arts in Acting at York University later. So,
How
um,
was Dal?
Dal, it was good. It was a great entry into the world of acting because I'm not sure now, but when I went there, it was very classically based. We took ballet and jazz dance.
What?
Yeah, man. We wore tights, black tights for every class. Very traditional voice classes and mostly Shakespearean acting, which I
Oh.
really appreciated because now Shakespeare's my thing. Like I teach Shakespeare here in Ukraine, Shakespearean acting, and I love Shakespeare. And then when I went to York University, that's where I learned more naturalism and kind of the
What
other
was that?
side of acting. Hmm?
What was naturalism?
Just more filmic acting, more. Not, it's not like method acting, but it's kind of on its way there. It's less
Mm,
about representation and more about trying to get as close to the real emotion as you can, like safely, and that sort of thing. It was very useful to have both. One was kind of working from the outside in, and the other one was working from the inside out. So
mm.
if you can't do it one way, you have the tools to do it the other way. So it's pretty
Mm.
cool.
So you decide not to finish high school and then go around the country doing skateboard and all this other stuff. How like what was the difference between high school and I guess university that made you not just finish university but actually go ahead to do your masters?
Um, it it was like it was just the right decision. As soon as I took my first acting class in my first year of university, I knew this is what I want to do. I wanted to do something in, on, around, or beside a stage anywhere. I took all the courses I could in theater, like costume. I took costume design. I took technical theater. I took academic theater courses. I took acting courses. I just loved it.
Mm,
And
mm,
film came a little later. Film came when I went to Toronto to do my master's. My acting teacher there, he's worked with some pretty big film actors. Like he taught Rachel McAdams and Scott Speedman and a bunch of other people. So I learned a lot about acting for film through him.
mm. So why did you decide to go to York? York?
It's the only school in Canada that has a Master of Fine Arts in Acting.
Mm,
There are a few of them in the States, but this is the only one in Canada. So you either, if you want to go to the next level in like actor training in Canada, you either go to York and to do the MFA in acting, or you go to the National Theatre School in Montreal. And unfortunately for acting, there's an age limit for acting. If you're over 26 or 7, you can't go. And I was at the time, so that variable was out of the equation.
why the restriction though? I don't understand.
I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong on this. Maybe they've changed this, but I'm almost certain there is a cutoff age, which is kind of a shame because,
Right.
you limit your acting, like what plays you can do. If you have some older people, you can do all kinds of interesting
Mm-hmm.
plays.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of having some
So
21-year-old playing King Lear, it's like,
why,
what?
while you were in Dal and stuff, what are some of the plays you enjoyed performing in? And
Oh,
some of the characters you liked?
I mean, the best experience by far was Daniel McIver, who's, I don't know if you know him, he does films and plays. He's one of Canada's greatest playwrights, if you ask me. He's actually from Nova Scotia, and he came to Dalhousie and did a play called You Are Here. It's a story about a woman kind of going through life, just navigating the trials of life. And I kind of played her best friend, Richard, and it was a magical, magical, magical experience. Like every performance, it was it's it's why you become an actor, to do that like as many times as you can. It's like a drug. And Daniel McIver directed it, and he was really great about telling actors. He wasn't trying to get everyone to act the same. He was trying to get
Mm-hmm.
each individual actor trying to get out of them what they needed and what he needed to hear,
Mm,
to do. And so to hear like this is your thing, you need to stop doing this and start trying this, and then it works.
Mm.
And he did it in a way that didn't hurt our fragile acting school egos. He was like, you do this or you do that, and it's very practical advice, and it was magical. We also did a broad farce by Tom Stoppard called On the Razzle, and that was a lot of fun. Like, slamming doors, farce. And farce is a lot of fun to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I played a very broad and overblown, pompous, arrogant, overbearing guy, and it was pretty fun.
What's the character called?
His name was Zangler. Zangler. It was set in Austria, so like a lot of the characters' names were German, and it was set in the 19th century, I believe, mid 19th century. So the costumes were just amazing, like big hats with flowers and jackets with frogging and big bright buttons. The costume studies department at Dalhousie is second to none. They're very good.
Mm. Mm. So, and then how like the camaraderie with the other artists?
In school,
Mm.
very good. It's, you when you go to a university and you have classmates in some of your classes, you get to know them. But when you're in an acting class with the same people for 4 years, for 9 hours, and then when you're doing plays, like 12 hours almost a day, you get to know people. You get to know them at their best and at their worst, and it's like we're all very close, and it's we've all moved away to different parts of the world. Not very many of us are still acting, but it's just the numbers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Life goes on. But we had a 10-year anniversary a couple of years ago in Toronto, and not everyone could make it, but it was just like old times. It was a lot of fun. Like we're very close. It's almost like family. Like I have 15 other brothers and sisters from that time.
Oh, and then you finished that, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna go do my masters. What was the push behind that? Made you decide to take that route?
Well, to be honest, you know, I wanted to try to be an actor in Toronto. Not much was happening in the film industry at the time in Halifax. It's certainly a lot better now.
Mm-hmm.
Trailer Boys had just started, or Trailer Park Boys had just started, and that was kind of the only gig in town. Um, and so I wanted to move to Toronto, but I didn't want to have to find an agent and go in cold. So the master's program is 2 years, and you work with this great acting teacher. He's not working there anymore, but his name's David Rotenberg, and he's a pretty well-renowned acting teacher. And so working with him, I didn't have to look for agents. Agents came to see us in plays. And so most actors, when they go to Toronto, they have to pound on doors and talk to agents and try to get them. So it was just a lot easier for me because I went and I had three different agents come to see my show, and I got to pick my agent, and that's very rare.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was kind of to get my foot in the door in Toronto, and it worked. I ended up doing a fair amount of film and TV and some theater there.
Mm. And how was it like living up in Toronto, contrast to living in schooling in Halifax, Nova Scotia?
Well, it's the big fish in the little pond. When you're in Halifax, everyone knows everyone. In Toronto, to some extent, but there's just so many actors there. There's so many actors from all over the world. But in Halifax, it's a very tightly knit community. Like everyone knows everyone really, and even if they haven't worked with them, they've seen their work. They know of them. So there's that element that makes it really cool. Um, the contrast to working in Toronto is, on a busy day when I was at my peak, I could be going to two or three auditions in one day,
Mm.
and just like going all over the place. There's just more work. So as an actor, that's really helpful because like you always have to be on the ball,
Mm.
and that rarely happens in Halifax. But I'm sure now it's probably a lot different. Like if I like when I go back, I plan on going back um, sometime before the fall if my wife's visa and all that works out. I would like to see what Halifax has to offer.
Mm. And then we had these meets, and I was like, oh my god, this guy is good. And I'm like, I'm throwing all these things at you. One part you're like good, one part you're the person's conscience, one part you're this thing, and everything you knock it out of the park every time. How do you
Thanks.
manage to do that?
Um, I I think especially with film, um, you you don't let the whole story overwhelm you. You take it each beat at a time, and you focus on each beat, each section, and don't even worry about the beats before and the beats after. Don't let those inform your choices. It's a bit different in theater because you eventually have to do the whole thing in from start to finish. But when I approach film, you get the chance to just really get the microscope at little parts and really kind of wire them and try them a couple different ways and get the best take. Whereas
Mm.
the process of theater is you rehearse and you do that there, but once you've kind of locked something in, it's kind of locked in. There is some flexibility, but with film, I always just and in theater a little bit, but with film, I just look at the beat. What does my character want right now? What is he doing to get what he wants? It's acting 101, but that helps it from becoming overwhelming. You know,
Mm. 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 Do you? What is your process? You get the scripts, and then what?
like most actors, I go through and see how many times my character's name comes up. See if it's a big no. No, first I read the whole script. Like even if I have a script in front of me right now, I'm doing a movie next week. It's a feature length, and I have a small part, but I read the whole script, so I know the tone of the movie. I know all the characters, especially like sometimes a character will mention your character when you're not in the scene, and that's good research to insight into what your character may or may not be like. Then after
Mm.
that, I go back, highlight all my lines, and then I start to break down. I take a pencil and I'll write. Sometimes it's a bit different every time, but usually I'll go through and what does he want now? How is he trying to do it? Sometimes I might make weird symbols that only I understand, some kind of hieroglyphics like arrows pointing in random ways that somehow make a connection in my mind to do something. But
Mm.
ultimately, you have to be prepared to throw all that out the window in case the director
Mm.
wants something completely different.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know,
And then you do all this prep work. You get to the set. Then what?
then it's trying to remain um, as relaxed as you can because there's a lot of standing around, and if you get too anxious, if that anxiety builds up, and then you go in front of the camera, it can kind of kill the performance. Like I like to try to stay as relaxed as possible. Usually for me, that ends up coming out with trying to make a couple jokes to relieve some of my nervous tension. Um,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and then I really like talking to directors a lot, but in film, there's usually not the time because the director's busy with the lighting, the DOP and stuff like that. Um, so I usually try to get as much as I can, and like with you, we did rehearsals, which is great, and I really I love rehearsals almost as much as I love performing. So
Yeah. Personally, I feel like you write this thing and you're asking this person to portray this thing that might be them, might not be them, whatever. But like giving them that time to like just play and enjoy this person and bring or interpret what they see in this character is like great. Like I mean, I think I cheat when I direct because like all I have to do is make sure I cast the right person and then my job is done.
I think yeah, because then you can deal. Then you have to deal with the DOP and the the grips and stuff like that. Yeah, um, yeah, and I think that's great. I've never really directed anything, but I would hope that that's the way I would go about it. Give the actors room to try things, because maybe they have better ideas than I do.
Mm,
Yeah.
like, I mean, I understand there are directors that feel threatened or whatever, but like, you trusting this person to bring this vision you have to life. Like, why would you trust, as in, if you've trusted them this far, why not go all the way, right? Because they don't want to look like shit anyway,
Mhm.
right? So, like, at least give them the benefit of the doubt, see what they bring to the role, and see how they try to interpret this thing you created.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm lucky. Like, I remember when we did Tell of a Man Who Whispered to Flowers. It's like pretty much like one scene. This guy's in a flower shop, but like he has to be nice and sinister in one scene, and like I like how you pull that off. How, when you're tasked with something like that, where do you go?
Um, like when playing a bad guy, basically.
Yeah.
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 You have to find bad guys don't necessarily hate themselves, nor do they really think that they're a bad guy. You know. So you have to find something like even if it's not something you personally, you have to imagine like I deserve this, or there's nothing really quite wrong with this, or I'm right. Um, but you also have to remember, that, bad people, I'm sure, feel a little bit guilty about doing bad things. If they don't, then they're, sociopaths or whatever. But like just regular bad people, I'm sure
Mm.
have regrets. So you have to kind of have a swing of you play the positive emotion. This is what I want. This is the repercussions, and you kind of try to swing between them. But when you're playing a bad guy, it's better to almost swing further to the positive because the negative, you let the audience fill that in.
Mm-hmm.
Like some of the best acting advice I ever got was from Daniel McIver, this Nova Scotia man, and he would just say, "You're trying to tell the audience something. Let the audience give the audience credit. They'll figure it out." And that just takes burden off the actor's shoulders. If they don't have to
Mm.
telegraph something or twist their mustache and I'm an evil man, you know, uh, they'll get the context and they'll find it uncomfortable, and that takes most of the way. Don't make it. Don't be uncomfortable. They'll feel uncomfortable because of the scene and the context.
Yeah.
So just stick
Yeah.
to your beats and your objectives. And find something that emotionally connects with you.
Right, right, right. Anyway, so I'm like, hey, Steven, you know what? I'm actually doing a play because I was like, I'm finally doing a play, and I wrote something for Fringe. They're like, yeah, sure, let's see it. And like, hey, you're the one that you've been doing play. Let's do a play. Like, well, no, no. I'm like, actually not in Halifax. I'm like, okay, yeah, you come back at some point. Like, no. I mean, like
About
Ukraine. I'm
that.
like, what?
I can't do the play when I'm in Ukraine.
So like, how did Ukraine happen?
Well, good story. I mean, I was on vacation here over 2 years ago, and uh, while I was here, I met a woman, and she was amazing, and I haven't felt that way about anyone ever. So when I left, we kept in contact, and then I decided to come back and visit, and I did, and we hung out, and then I decided, I I gotta try. I haven't felt like this, so I made the decision. I said I'm gonna move there, and then we'll see if it works out. And it did.
Wait, so what is the like process to move to Ukraine?
Well, I first, like, for a Canadian, you can come without a visa for 90 days.
Okay.
And then I got a job that helped because it was an English teaching job, and the school was called the American English Center. So part of their deal is the students work with Ukrainian English teachers, and they get to work with native speaking English teachers. So they're really accommodating and trying to make sure that these teachers stay. Um, and so I got a job with them, and they got my temporary residence. They got the ball rolling for my temporary residence permit, so which I have to renew real soon. Um, yeah.
It's a
Uh,
good thing we are talking now. And how long did it take for that to, for you to get the temporary residence?
So I got here December 1st, and then after the 90 days was up, I had to go and get a visa extension that was sponsored by the school. And then after that expired, we applied for the permanent residence. And so I got my permanent residence about a year ago. Oh,
Oh,
it was it in June or July? Oh, yeah, in late June I got it, so almost a year ago.
so like that's where the Ukraine, that's where the plane crashed, the war is happening. That's it, right?
Yeah, well, the plane was, which plane?
You're right,
Because
right.
one plane
Like that
was,
was shut down.
yeah, that was shot down. It was going over where the active war is, yeah.
Right,
And then, but the other plane recently was in Iran, but that was a different thing.
right, right, right,
But
right.
yeah, there's a war going on about, I would say, 700 kilometers from here. Uh,
That's like not far.
No, it isn't in Canadian distance, but in European
Oh.
distance, that's like you're in another country half the time when you drive 700 kilometers, you know? So yeah, it's you're aware of it, but you don't really feel it, you know. I don't I forget all about it until sometimes I'll see on the news that, a Ukrainian soldier was shot or something like that, and then you're like, oh, right. Um, and it's been going on for a long time, and
So that was just about where the borderline is, something like this, right?
yes and no. I mean, there's so many nuances to it. Basically, in Ukraine, like where Kyiv is, where I live, it's pretty much in the middle of the country. And the further you go west towards Europe, the more people speak just Ukrainian. And then the more you go further east towards Russia, the more people speak Russian. And then that also comes into like the cultural identity. Like if like a lot of these places where the war is happening, some of these people identify culturally more with Russia than they do with people who are living in Lviv, which is 900 kilometers away or whatever. And so
Mm-hmm.
you have this demographic of people in the same country who um, speak similar but different languages, and culturally some identify with Russia more than they're pro-Russian, others are pro-European, and I mean that's what the riots were, the Maidan riots were in 2014, was because the majority of Ukraine wanted to be more European,
Mm.
and then Russia annexed Crimea, which was a part of Ukraine, and that they said they had an election to do that, but it wasn't really an election. And you know,
So, like, how far from Russia are you?
that's a good question. I mean, I think the closest I would be to Russia might be 500 kilometers,
Mm,
because the border, yeah, maybe 5 or 600 kilometers. I'm not sure.
right.
Um, I
So, like, does I mean, with what is happening and the cultural identity and stuff, and just what is happening in the bigger picture with Russia, like with Navalny, is
hmm
that how,
yeah.
all that stuff? How does it affect Ukraine apart
Um,
from the war going on?
I think they they look at the injustices that are going on there the same way everyone else is. Um, and uh, it's most people in the West are in shock with some of the things that have been happening, like with Navalny. A lot of new laws have been passed in Russia that are just there to keep the powers that be in power. Like, I mean, Putin has been president since 1999.
Wow.
He was prime minister once, but he was still pulling the strings, and then he was president again because then they changed the laws recently that he's allowed to be in power until I don't know 2028 or something like that. Like, He's like they don't have he's a czar, you know. He's running it like a czar.
Mm.
And it's so when you see that, it's really sad because I mean there's so much that Russia has to offer culturally, and you know my wife's Russian. You know, and it's a beautiful country. I've been to St. Petersburg and Moscow, and just beautiful and beautiful people, and you know, it's sad that um, I just can't imagine what they could achieve as a country if they had more freedoms to do it, you know.
Mm. The other thing I'm curious about, being that you're there, and also being that you're Canadian, which is the worst winter though? Like, does it really look as bad as it's on TV, like in these movies, or it's just exaggerated?
I Here in Ukraine, it's much worse in Halifax. Much worse. Like, you know, it snowed my first winter here, it snowed maybe 3 or 4 times and it would melt the next day. And then they said that was unusual. This year it snowed a couple more times, but it's compared to like, and I've been in Saskatoon minus 45, so like I know real cold. So I mean, maybe in Russia and Siberia and places like that, yeah, you know, but
Right,
here it's pretty easy winter.
right. So with the teaching English, like, and you also mentioned you teach film. How did that come about?
I teach Shakespeare. I teach acting Shakespeare. That was when I came here and I had the job teaching English before I came here. Um, the most pragmatic thing I did in this whole thing was to make sure I had a job before I left for a foreign country. But, you know, I'm not really qualified to be an English teacher. You know, I speak English, but, you know, I'm qualified to teach acting, and that's something that I love doing. So I found this theater here in Kyiv called Pro English Theater, and it's all English speaking theater. The actors and the students and the teachers all speak English. And I approached the artistic director and I said, I'm Canada, I have a master's degree in acting, I would love to teach Shakespeare here. And he's like, oh my God, yeah, let's do it. And so I've been teaching Shakespearean acting to Ukrainian acting students. It's been really cool.
You do have to do it all in English, or do they translate?
Their English level has to be at intermediate in order to take the courses. I don't think that they check to see if people have that, but you know, I've had one student who was at a much lower level, and she was really smart though, and she would go home and work so hard, and she was really good, and
Mm.
half the time she would have to have someone translate to her in I think they were speaking Russian. I still can't tell the difference between Russian and Ukrainian, but uh,
Wait, so those are two different languages. Like, if a Russian is speaking to Ukrainian, would they understand each other or just
yeah.
fly over? Okay.
Yeah, they would. I mean, there might be a couple words here or there, but for the most part, yeah, I think they would. The Ukrainians would definitely understand the Russian. The Russian may or may not, but probably would understand. Um, you know, there's a lot of the words are the same word. Um, like good morning is the same in both languages. Dobre utro is so. You laughing at my Russian?
So, did you have to learn Russian before you travel there, or?
I didn't. I should have. I mean, I still had a great experience. The thing is, like in Ukraine, and in particular in Kyiv, if you're in the city center and you go into any store, there's always one person that knows English. Not the case in Russia. So if you're going to Russia, you should probably learn numbers so you can know how much they're charging you, and you should probably learn the Cyrillic alphabet. I didn't do either of those, but I still got by, and it was still awesome.
Those are those funny shaped ones, right? Like the like kind of like Greek and stuff, right?
Some of them
Do you
looked like
see?
Greek.
Do you pronounce them as is? I was like, as is written.
You do though. It's a phonetic alphabet. So if you see a letter, it's
Oh,
always pronounced the same way every time, with a couple exceptions.
oh.
So once you learn what the symbol stands for, I can read Cyrillic and speak it, and it sounds like I don't know what the word is, but I can say it, and I might be stressing it in the wrong place, but
Mm.
you know, I can read. And I'm learning a little bit more, so I'm really good at ordering coffee and beer.
How do
Re
you say that?
Можно маленький cappuccino, пожалуйста? Can I have a
Is
small
that please
cappuccino,
at the
please?
end?
What?
Was that please at the end?
Пожалуйста, yeah, yeah,
Pochasta.
yeah. And then у вас есть пиво? Можно большой стакан пива? Do you have beer? Give me a big glass of beer.
Wait, do they drink a lot of vodka there?
No, no. You know
Oh,
what?
so that's just like a thing.
It is. I mean, but the thing that I see in the liquor stores the most is cognac. Yeah,
Oh.
like Russian and Ukrainian made cognac. I see more of that on the shelves than I do vodka.
Mm.
But I
Uh,
think the vodka is a stereotype.
right. Oh man, marketing companies here just blind people. Oh man, this is all the Russians drink. It's a drink of the czars and all that
Yeah, yeah.
trash. So, what is your approach then, like with teaching Shakespeare when because like now you've gone through Dal, your masters, all this training you've had. How do you now take all this thing in you and then give it to your students?
Um, it's it's kind of like how I said how I like directors who kind of point out what you need, what each individual needs to work on, but in a different way. Like first of all, I have to explain the boring iambic pentameter, all the literal terms so that we can communicate, like iambic pentameter, caesura, feminine endings, all this terminology to perform the meter of the poetry because it's dramatic poetry, right? You can't just read it natural. And so I teach those the ABCs kind of, and then I work with each student, and then I'll tell them kind of like this is what you're really good at this. I mean, it's always great as a teacher to say you're doing this very well. It's almost like the compliment sandwich. You're doing this very well, but this needs a little bit of work, because if you're a student, it can be very frustrating for your teacher. I remember teachers going no, 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 and you're like I just need something positive. So I always try to give something positive, like this is working. I like this, but in order to make this work better, we need to fix
Mm,
this.
mm,
And Generally, I do exercises with with the class, but then when I see a student rehearsing a piece, I'll think of a good exercise to do with that one student to get the rest of the class to watch.
mm,
And then a penny might drop in someone watching too. I think there's great value in watching other people rehearse with a director or a teacher, and not check out. Like, just because you're not on stage doesn't mean you can't learn anything.
mm.
You definitely can. And I did when I was young. When I was in acting school, I was rapt watching other people work with teachers and directors. Like
Do
I would go
you?
to plays that I wasn't even in and watch rehearsals when I was at Dalhousie.
Mm,
I loved it.
nice. Do you like so with the school? Are you guys building towards a play, or it's just like come and learn this thing and that's
The
it?
first session I had, we tried to do an abridged version of Macbeth, and that was pretty ambitious. Even though I edited the script down to something like 90 pages, um, maybe it was even less than that. It was still really, really hard. Um,
Mm,
it's just you need more time. So the second after that, now I assign them each a monologue and then two scenes, and so they have time to work on smaller bits and kind of polish it a little bit more. And uh, and this time I have a new session starting next week, and we're partnering up with this medieval weapons maker. So he's going to give us
oh,
all kinds of like swords and stuff. So I think I'm going to
that's so
do
cool.
like a lot of monologues with, war and, Prince Hal and Henry V and once more onto the breach and stuff like that. That would be really
Mm,
cool to have swords and stuff like that with. So, but yeah, no, it's there's because these are amateur actors and we only rehearse 6 hours a week. There's no time.
mm. Um, wait. You were mentioned that your wife and yourself were kind of planning to visit Halifax, see stuff here and all that jazz. But you can't right now for one because of COVID.
Well,
How
technically,
did
we
like
can.
well, because they're Canadian.
Yeah.
But oh wait, actually, you know what? You can, but yeah, you have to do the 14-day thing.
You gotta
Yeah,
go to a
yeah.
hotel. Yeah.
So check it out though. How's COVID been there in Ukraine?
It's pretty bad. Like, it's they don't have the infrastructure that we do in Canada. And a lot of people here, the healthcare system is two-tier. So there's government hospitals and there's private hospitals. And you have to have a little bit of money to go to the private or yeah, the private hospitals. And the government hospitals are like, there's no other way to say it. They're literally falling apart. Like, the buildings they're Soviet buildings. They're old buildings. Um, and the I don't know if it's the culture here. Like, we survived Chernobyl. We don't care about this. There's most people don't seem bothered by it. They say, like, they have the attitude like, I'll get sick, no big deal.
Wow.
And I'm like, but what about you getting your babushka sick? Your grandmother sick? They're like, so it's kind of a different approach here than there, and the numbers reflect that. They went
Oh.
down yesterday. 2 days ago, I checked, and I think there were 5,000 cases in one day in the country of
Whoa.
44 million, and then um, today was 2,500, so it was cut in half.
Mm,
But I think there has been 45,000 deaths or something like that.
damn.
Yeah, a lot.
And so there's no like mandatory mask, or you just
There
wear
is,
mask if you
there
want
is,
to.
but people don't really say anything. Like, I was on the Marshutka today, and that's like a Soviet-style small bus that you take from. It's bus, but it's a special kind of bus. And legally you have to wear a mask, and the drivers just don't want to get in the hassle. And there's three or four people, and these are small buses. Like, these are mini
Mm.
buses, right? That seat maybe 20. And the people get on with no masks at all, and it's just like, come on, like, what are you doing? The subway's a
Mm.
little bit more policed, and I rarely ever see anyone on the subway. But the marshutkas, it's quite crazy. And it's a lot of businesses are open. That we just got out of a lockdown, so restaurants, everything's pretty much open right now.
Oh wow.
You just have to wear a mask until you start eating, and then put your mask back on. But
Mm.
yeah,
Yeah, we were doing so well, and then I don't know. Well, but hopefully, things will get better and people will put things together. But going back to when you were like, hey, by the way, I'm in Ukraine and stuff. You also mentioned you were there to workshop a play. Do you want to tell me a little bit about that play? I'm gonna let you go soon now.
yeah. Well, I mean, I was researching a play when I came here.
Researching, yeah.
Yeah, so I wrote a play in Halifax called Sanctuary.
Quack quack quack.
Serious, it's called Sanctuary. I found it first. Um, yeah, and I was writing this play, and then I submitted it to Ship's Company Theatre in Parsborough, and it got selected to be workshopped. So I got to work with a director, a dramaturge, and two actors, and work through the play, work through the first draft, which we did. And so then I started working on the second draft, and one of the characters is Russian. So I was like, I can't in good conscience write this character if I haven't even been to Russia. So I took a big trip going to a lot of places, but the main trip was going to Russia. So I applied for a visitor visa, went to Russia for 2 weeks, spent time in St. Petersburg and Moscow, and certainly learnt a lot that did end up getting into the play. But
Mm,
I'm now working on my third draft, and now my connection is even more, and I'm just making him, because I didn't want to make him a stereotype, I didn't want
right.
him to
He
make him
drinks
this.
vodka.
Yeah, yeah. This is my bear Ivan. Say hello, Ivan.
Right.
I didn't want that. And
Right.
also he's kind of a bad guy, but I didn't want to be again, like a stereotypical Russian. Oh, here's a Russian. Here's the bad guy.
Mm,
There needs to be something redeeming about him. He's a bad guy who happens to be Russia, but he's not all bad.
mm.
Um, and so to make it more real, I'm hopefully in the next year I can get some sort of stage reading, or maybe even a full-fledged production. Who knows? But that's
Mm.
once we get back to Halifax. That's my goal. My main goal is to get that produced.
How long is it gonna be?
The play is around 65 pages, 64 pages maybe.
Okay.
So it's kind of like film, where usually in film you say about a minute a page. In theater it tends to be a little bit longer. So I would say that it'd be about an hour and 15 minutes. A
Mm.
nice digestible play.
Yeah, man, you don't want to go to a play and be like, when is this thing gonna end?
Yeah, I mean, I love theater, but when it has to be really, really good if I'm entertained
Right,
for 2 hours, like,
right, right, right,
and there's
right.
some plays that are 3 hours. If you did Hamlet in its entirety, that's a 4 hour play. It better be good.
Oh man, so now Ukraine is pretty much you've been there almost 2 years now, right?
A year and a half, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. What are some? I mean, apart from like, I guess we talked about the medical system contrast to Canada. What are some differences you noticed?
Personal space.
In what way?
You don't have it. Yeah, it's interesting. Like, in Canada, you go into a place and you see there's people around you. You kind of like, if you sit on the bus, you sit, if there's a bunch of seats empty, you take, 3 or 4 seats away from the next person. But here, it'll be an empty bus and someone will just sit right next to you, and you're just like, do I know you? Like, why? Out of all the seats, you're sitting next to me, and like lines are weird here. No one lines up. So if, like, right now, like, um, for example, there's a lot of places that they're only having one person in at a time, like the pharmacies. So people will just wait outside for their turn to go into the pharmacy, but it's just a blob of people, and like,
How do
you're
you know
like,
your turn?
how do you know it's your turn? And basically you have to just ask. You say, who's the last person, and they'll say, and then you remember who that is, and then you're next. But it doesn't stop anyone from cutting in front of you. And when you don't speak the language, it's hard to argue with them. And like
Right,
for me,
right,
it's
right.
like Canadians would form a line. They would just form, like, they're stand. Okay, I'll stand behind you. You stand. But so no one lines up. And I have a theory about that. I have a theory that people still remember the communist days when they had to line up for bread, and now that they don't have to line up for bread, they don't line up for anything.
Anything.
Yeah. But
Right, 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 right.
and so there's personal space is very interesting. Uh, just like safety things, like, we went to a place where there's a cliff, and it was it was probably 100 feet down. If it was in Canada, there'd be a big fence, signs everywhere saying watch out for the cliff, and here, no, no, it's nothing. It's just like, you're you don't see the cliff, then that's your problem, buddy. Like, there's things like that where like, when you first get here, you're like, oh my God, like manhole covers, like, you don't step on them here, because,
You am I going?
oh, you'll go right in. Like, you can
No
YouTube
way.
that and see that, and it's a thing that happens. And sometimes now I'm trained to always at least step on the edge of one and not in the center. And sometimes
Mm.
like, the whole thing's just, and you hear that big
Wow.
metal sound, and it's a real deal. My wife told me when I first got here, don't do that. And I was like, really? And then now I'm like, oh yeah, don't don't do that.
Oh man, Scott. Oh God. Okay, I said I was gonna let you go, but I have one more question though. Like with deciding to move countries for love, like how do you know it was the right decision though? Before now you kind of know, but
Mhm.
back then, how do you know, okay, making the right choice?
Well, I I knew it was the right choice at the time. I knew that's kind of like what my heart wanted, and I, it was a big, bold, romantic gesture, I'm sure. But for me, I thought, well, what's the worst that happens? I get there, it doesn't work out. I come back. I'd have great stories to tell. I've always wanted to live in another country, experience, being immersed in a foreign culture.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, if that's the worst that, happen the worst thing that happens, it's I still come out on top, so I kind of went into it with that attitude, like, but I just had a feeling, I was like, this is going to work out. It was in the back of my head, but then I always told my friends, like, so if it doesn't work out, then you
Mm-hmm.
just come back. um, but coming back now is much more challenging with COVID and
Right.
immigration bureaucracy, which I'm sure you're familiar with.
Right. 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 Okay, I said that was gonna be my last one, but I have a real last one though. If someone is visiting Ukraine, what should you not do? Apart from standing on top of manholes.
uh, What should you not do? You shouldn't you shouldn't assume because people are walking around not smiling. You shouldn't assume that that means they're mean people, because we come from Canada where people smile all the time, and Nova Scotia where people smile even more than that. You walk around and you see people like on the street walking everywhere, just kind of very serious looks, and to someone from our part of the world, that can be like, oh, that looks like a mean person or an
Mm-hmm.
asshole or whatever. You can't judge a book by its cover. It's not, and then you start talking to them and you can just see the faces just open up, and it, you see the stereotypical pictures of the stern, tough Ukrainian or Russian, and to an extent there is that, but they will give you the shirt off their back, and you'll see like someone, like just the other day I saw, like, there was a guy who was really really like drunk in public, and like he was kind of staggering, and like four or five people, all kind of total strangers, came, helped pick him up and wiped him down and said, you should go home now, kind of thing, where I don't know if I would see four or five people do that in Canada. I might see
Mm-hmm.
one, or maybe people might just try to ignore it.
Right.
These
Right.
people,
Right.
it was like four complete strangers all kind of came together to help out this person.
Mm.
And so they're very there's a theory, the coconut theory, that Eastern Europeans are more like a coconut. They're hard on the outside, but soft and gushy on the inside,
Oh.
and that Westerners, what's the Westerners are like a peach, soft on the outside and then very hard pit on the inside. And I think there's a little bit of truth to that, a little bit. Yeah.
Mm. Well, Scott, glad you're having a wonderful time there, and I know how powerful love can be because I did the same thing myself, so I understand it. And I hope things work out. So you should come back soon because I'm writing something. It'll be great for you to finally do something again, so we can do something again together when you're back.
Yeah.
But really, thank you so much for coming to the sanctuary today. I'm really, really grateful, man.
Oh, thank you for having me. And when I get back, myself and Anna will have to go out on a double date with you and Monica.
Right, right, right. That would be nice. Oh my god, yes. Yeah, I might be rude and just ask her stupid Russian questions.
Well, she's got to get used to it eventually.
Oh man, Scott, thanks, man.
All right. Good to see you.